There's a certain level, or I guess threshold, where I'll slow down and start playing tight.
I haven't seen it.
Welcome to PokerRoad Radio,
Sick merch.
featuring the very best in pokertainment.
His bluffs are like mine on steroids.
And you know this!
Dude, hey, I squeezed the same card twice.
How long does it take you to size up a random?
They're Asian.
Where do you think you are as far as that level of maturity of your poker game is?
Past that?
And now, today's PokerRoad host, Joe Stapleton.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to PokerRoad Radio, brought to you by Lock Poker. That's right, kids. Lock Poker. Your host today are poker legend Barry Greenstein and myself. I'm a guy who thinks getting flatted is what happens when you getting flatted. God damn it. That wasn't a joke. Is what happens when you hit too many curves when you're parking your car. I am Joe Stapleton. There we go. I think that's good that the rim shot comes after my name because that's more of the joke than the actual joke. We are coming to you from the 2011 World Poker Tour. Los Angeles Poker Classic play is still going on here at Day 3. The structure is so good that things slow down a little bit on Day 3 as they approach the money bubble. They're going to play down to the money today, which means that play is going to go very late tonight. It's also the Oscars are going on, so I actually don't even want to try to drive home to Hollywood for the next 4 hours. We got a great show for you guys today. We've got, as I mentioned, poker legend Barry Greenstein here with us today. He's going to help us recap his fairly brief Day 3 and what else was going on today. We're going to touch on the other big controversial story happening in poker news. We got to one of them yesterday. We're going to cover the other one today. Okay. And all right, and also we're going to be joined by special guest Matt Savage, and I promised a lot of big announcements this week, and we're going to get to them in the order of their sort of gaspiness. And today we are going to, since the Poker Beat is no longer with us, in the last segment today, we are going to unveil the insider. I know a lot of people have been curious. I'll tell you right now, it is not Barry Greenstein. Barry Greenstein is not the insider, but I've been given the green light by Scott Huff, who said that, hey, the show's over. If you want to unveil the insider, go ahead and do that. So in our last segment, we're going to let everyone know who, in fact, the insider was on the Poker Beat. But before we get to that, Barry, what have you been doing today? Sweating your Oscar bets? You got a sawbuck on Inception or what? What did you do after the tournament? We're going to get to your tournament later.
I did what I seem to do habitually, lose money after getting knocked out of the tournament. I played online, played some tournaments, then played some cash games and lost money. So I try not to do that, but I didn't feel like I was playing badly. I might be wrong.
Are you a steamer, or do you put...
Well, if the tournament's emotional, it's hard. Like the main event of the World Series of Poker, it's really dangerous to play after that. And that's why I almost every year, probably until last year, played the first day of the main event. I don't even know if I did last year or not. But I used to always play the first day to give myself a couple days to get over it, and then I'd get to play against people who were getting knocked out on later days. And they'd be steaming, and I'd win money. But the problem with that strategy, it's hurt me the last few years. I used to get a hold of chips every year at the main event. And the last few years I haven't, and I think one of the reasons is I've been playing on the first day, and that's usually the worst day. The last day, where you have lots of people, is often the best day.
Why is that?
Because people who have qualified online and have real jobs, or people who are going to play,
they can't take all those days off.
They would rather come at the last moment and not take the extra days off. They have lives, actually.
So therefore, more players equals a higher number of bad players, same percentage of bad players. That's when you want to be there.
Anyone who's playing the first few days knows they may be in town for a while, so they probably are
decent players.
Around,
just like you. It's Barry Greenstein et al. All right, so today you went and played online, nothing doing there. I saw you tweeted something about being in a tournament, but no one knew what you were talking about.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, there was something. I was like, it's level 10, blah, blah, blah.
That's this tournament.
No, I don't think so. I think there was maybe you repeated a tweet or something. We're going to get to the bottom of this because I would love to be right for once against you, Barry.
Okay, you're not. so wait for another time.
Too many people are tweeting about the Oscars for me to even find the...
It was level 11, which is the first level today. There's 5 levels each of the first 2 days.
Yeah, but it was tweeted 3 hours ago. Well, in trouble after level 11. I have 26K, and the average is nearing 100K.
Well, Twitter... Yeah, Alex told me she didn't get my tweet, and that's not because of me. Twitter or whatever.
You're blaming Twitter now. Yeah. The multi-billion-dollar industry.
Right away. And,
okay.
So it came late. But no, level 11 was the first level today. And I got down to about 26,000, as I said in that tweet, and then I didn't double up, but I just won a few pots. Somebody misplayed a hand really badly against me, and I got up to 60,000. And then
let's talk about the hand. How did someone misplay their hand? Let's give everyone a little poker advice.
The guy limped in the small blind, and it was the first time he limped, and I didn't think he had played with me enough to know that I'm probably going to raise it.
You were in the big blind.
I was in the big blind with any two cards. If I think he's weak, and so usually the first time they're trying to feel out if they can limp on your small blind and get away with it.
Right. See a flop.
So I really didn't think he would have much in this situation. Like, I didn't think he was trying to trap me with a big hand because he didn't know me well enough. And I had ace-6 offsuit, and I raised 4,000. The blinds at that point were 8 and 16, I guess. And so I raised, basically the size of the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And he called, which was a big surprise to me that he called. And, I was expecting to take it down. Even though ace plays for somebody, but it is ace-6 offsuit. When you're short chips, you don't mind just picking up that round of antes and stuff like that. So he called, and I said, okay, that's surprising. Maybe he's one of these guys who limps with an ace also. But I thought more likely he probably just had something like about a 10-8 offsuit and decided he had a lot of chips, and he just wasn't going to let me get away with it.
Right, it was just going to be
young kid.
Okay.
So now the flop comes ace-10. 5. And he checked, and so now I bet 5,000, which I thought was might look like I really am still stealing and don't have.
You're betting
anything
for value, but you won't.
Well, I'm not only betting for value. I'm betting I'm trying to show a weakness. Like
right.
Maybe he's not going to think I was just on the steal, and he's going to might do something.
He thinks Barry's C-bet Greenstein can't even fire the full C-bet.
He called. And I say, okay, well, that's a little dangerous. That he called and, he didn't try to take it away. He called, so he probably has something. And then a 3 came on the turn. And because my kicker was so bad, if he had an ace and he decided he wasn't going to raise, but he still called, well, maybe he's got a bad kicker too.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is there are 2 bad kickers on the board lower than mine, and he could make aces up with those. And the way it played at this point, I was afraid that I was going to have to go with it. And I don't have a lot of chips, and he had a lot of chips. And I really didn't want to go bust on the hand. So I thought that it was better to just control the pot.
Okay.
And so I checked on the
turn.
I checked on the turn. And now the board paired the 5 on the river. And I guess, what did I say, ace-10-3 it came?
Yeah, so you're playing the 10.
Yeah, and then 5-5. Actually, I don't even remember which one paired, which could have been relevant.
So if he had aces up, he's
the card that was initially on the flop paired on the river.
The 4.
No, it came either ace-10-3 or ace-10-5.
Okay.
And the other one on the turn, and then the card that was on the board.
Got it, okay.
Which is relevant because, there is a chance he called me even with bottom pair.
Got it.
Okay. So anyway, now on the river he bets 8,000.
He leads out all of a sudden.
Yeah. And the way I played it, there's no choice. I have an obvious call. He didn't bet too much. But he had king-6 offsuit. So it's kind of a weird hand for him to have.
He was just bluffing with king high.
Well, the weird thing is, and I didn't want to insult him, but I almost wanted to say, because the way I played it, it might look like I have nothing. Was that a king high bet for value, or was that a bluff? It's like that was the question that was going through my mind, because it's kind of a weird, if he's going to call me on the flop, I don't know if he called me to take it away on the turn, and I foiled his plan by checking, but then he bets it on the river. What is he trying to bluff out? Because if I had bottom pair, I now made trips, obviously I'm not full. If I had tens, I probably, reasonable chance I'll pay him
right,
off
not for that amount.
A 10, because he didn't bet too much.
If you have an ace, you're not folding.
It was really a weird bet if you think about it.
Yeah, I thought you were bluffing the whole way with 7 deuce.
I really had to kind of bite my tongue to say, was that value? Because I didn't want, that'd be kind of like a needle.
Right.
And so I just didn't.
But sometimes you genuinely want to know the answer. Like, sometimes it's half out of, like, a needle, but also half out of, like, no, but seriously, like, what was your rationale?
Yeah, it was weird. So that got me up to 60,000. That, and that was nice chips at that point. And then 2 hands later, I was on the button, I now finally had, almost more chips than I've ever had in the tournament, and I almost had 40 big blinds. The blinds are 8 and 16.
Barry was almost up to his starting stack.
No, the starting's 30. I double the starting stack. And now Mike Baxter, 2 to the right of the button, raises in for 4,200. He'd been raising a pretty fair amount of hands. Mike Baxter, people have seen him on some of the TV shows. I hadn't seen him on the TV shows because I know my lineup this year for high stakes poker.
I know him for something, but
yeah,
I
he
know
played
the
on
name.
he's played on like previous high stakes poker, and unfortunately I didn't watch it. And I had almost this thought before I went on that I should. I remember the day before I said, I never look at any of the TV shows and stuff that I haven't played on, but maybe I should prepare in some way. And I didn't know my lineup, and I had a thought about, hey, isn't Mike Baxter is one of the amateur players who's going to be playing? Maybe I should see how he plays. And then he ended up being in my lineup, and I had early on a critical hand that I had to make a decision. I had no clue how Mike Baxter plays. I heard he was a little bit wild, and that factored into it. And so it was really disappointing, and it just tells you if you know who your lineup is, with some of these people who have been on TV, you can at least look at tape.
Right.
And I hadn't. But so anyway, now I got to face Mike Baxter again after remembering on high stakes poker, I didn't make a good decision against him. I hope I'm not giving away too much. And so here he had opened for his normal 4,200, and I had 40 big blinds, an uncomfortable amount.
Right, we talked about this yesterday. Right?
It's like 25 big blinds I'm shipping on them or semi-shipping to get it all in.
40, you feel kind of dumb getting it in with a
40 is decent chips. I hate to give them away for that much because I'm basically going to. If I play it for that much, I might end up only playing against hands that beat me. Mm-hmm. Occasionally racing maybe against jacks or tens, but I'll be up against ace king a lot. So I decided I'm just going to probably call in position instead of 3-betting him, which was probably a weak play. But it was.
And you had ace queen?
I had ace queen, but it was mostly determined by 2 things: 1, my stack size, and 2, we had played some pots where he had checked flops and. I like, as you know, I continuation bet, and I really like playing against people who don't.
So far, this is actually playing out like yesterday when you had the ace-queen also, and you just...
Yeah, very similar situation, well. and I hope to be against people who don't. Like, I totally agree with all the people who say I don't know what I'm doing. Don't continuation bet it, please, they're right. Don't do that. Because then you do get some more, especially when you're in position, people who will check when they miss flops, reliably.
Do you want them
to take pots away from them?
Do you want them to not c-bet so that you can peel a card for free, or so that you can take the lead?
I can steal a lot of times.
Like
a lot of the people, if they get a dangerous flop, if they hit it, they're going to bet because they don't want to give off a dangerous card. But if they miss it, they figure you hit it and you take it away. And so it's a good way to get a hold of chips, especially in the main event of the World Series. It's like I got a hold of chips and stayed there. It's like everything was people not continuation betting and just letting me bet because they're playing so scared and pick up pots with nothing. People think this is deep stack no limit, where now that's a reasonable strategy, but it's not. It's short stack no limit, which is closer to limit poker. And in limit poker, for the most part, the betting starts after the person with the lead bets the flop. That's just the way it goes.
Right.
And so people confuse a lot of times tournament poker with cash game no limit.
Right.
They're different breeds. But anyway, so he had checked enough flops that it means that he's a guy, I don't mind taking flops with, even though he's got me out chipped heavily. But then something funny happened on the way to me on the button. Is the guy to my right in the cutoff moved all in for 20,000. Okay, Mike had played fair number of hands. Now the guy moves in for 20,000, and now what do I do with ace queen?
Right, because the guy to your right knows what you know.
Well, no, he. Random guy. I don't know what he knows. But,
he knows that Mike's been playing a lot of hands.
Well, not a lot. But, probably more than average. And so now his shipping range there, he could have king jack. I don't know this guy very well. He had an accent. He wasn't, certainly was born outside the United States. He had come and replaced someone who had busted earlier, and he'd only been there for about a round. So I didn't have much information on him. I think he may have played one hand, got called and folded. But I just thought his range is pretty wide. A lot of people there might have an ace-10, king-jack, things like that, pair of sevens. And I just thought this totally changed the situation. And so I know I had 59,000 because we cut it up. We had to count it out. And I now thought it's probably better to just shift over the top of him. and that's what I did. And when you ship for that much, because there's really nothing in between to do. Once he had put 20,000, I have 59,000.
You weren't going to raise to 33,000 after that.
The thing that you are watching for is the insta-call. You're just hoping that the guy doesn't say, well, I have to call. I've got kings, aces,
Right.
Those are the two hands that you get insta-called. And even ace-king people, especially because Mike had a lot of chips, will pretty much insta-call. But Mike said something that made me feel a little upbeat. He said, how much do you have?
Okay.
So that's
right
away.
If you have aces or kings, you don't really care what the other guy has.
Yeah, how much do you have usually puts the hand more to ace, jack, ace, queen, or tens if there's a pair somewhere in that range. So that's good. I think I'm not dominated, and I may be racing if he calls with tens or jacks. That's what my read was on that question. But unfortunately, that was the first good news. But the bad news was he didn't take very long. He says, well, I guess I have to call.
He just instinctually asked how much.
So when the guy says I have to call, that takes ace-queen. It certainly takes ace-jack out of there, and it probably takes ace-queen out also.
It could be jacks.
And so it's really, at this
scenario.
point, I'm saying I had to call, show me jacks, please.
Yeah, right.
I want to be racing. Well, it ends up, he had ace-king of diamonds, and the other guy had ace-king.
Okay.
So all I need is a queen, and the beautiful queen of clubs was the door card, as they hold the queen of clubs. And so now everyone's, and it looks like I'm about to, from nothing, I've struggled this whole tournament, I'm about to have 60 plus 60 is 120 plus the other guy's 20 is 140. I'm about to be over average chips and in pretty good shape in this tournament from being dead for the last many hours of the tournament. Unfortunately, they spread the king of clubs behind it, and that's all she wrote. At 10, I had to hope for a queen or a jack for a tie.
Those lucky guys hit a 2-outer on you, Barry.
In some sense. So, I could go back to Alex in the room and say, what happened? I got 2-outed.
I got 2-outed again. I'm so unlucky.
You play so good. They hit those 2-outers.
You don't lie at this point, do you?
No, I
do you cajole a little? Do you massage the story?
No, I told her the queen was the first card off, and she said, so they needed 2 outs to beat you?
Yeah, okay, yeah, she's right on board.
I said, yeah, can you believe it?
That's how you know you got to keep her.
Right.
Before we take our first break here, when we get back, we're going to talk about Barry High Stakes Poker. It had its premiere last night. We're going to talk about some more controversial poker news going on here in the industry. But before we go,
you got my thing about the political thing.
Oh, my God, yes, and Barry has been doing some high stakes prop betting. He's like what do they call it? The Beltway. He's a Beltway bettor now. We'll get to that in the next segment as well. But before we go, I want to tell them about the PokerRoad Club. It's the PokerStars home game. It's the PokerRoad Radio one, so that members of the forums can get on the action. It's the PokerRoad Club on PokerStars home games. You can check that out in the forums. Also, don't forget about the Poker League, PokerRoad League, going on at BroadwayTables.com. And, of course, be sure to check out WPT and Club WPT. PokerRoad Radio is sponsored by Club WPT. Never lose a dime. Online, again, playing at ClubWPT.com. PokerRoad Radio, we got to take a break right now, but when we get back, we're going to have lots more stuff. Back after this.
I am an arms dealer.
Welcome back to PokerRoad Radio, brought to you by...
I'm an arms dealer. That's a good segue for
the
Middle East thing.
For the Middle East thing coming up. We want to remind you guys we're brought to you by Lock Poker, and we are coming to you from the World Poker Tour event, the Los Angeles Poker Classic. By the way, Season 9, if you guys had trouble finding the World Poker Tour last year, it's got new times on FSN every Sunday at 8 and 11 p.m. You got the Raw Deal segment this year with Tony Dunst, which is pretty cool. They've got all new graphics, 4-color decks, and coverage begins on day one. You get a little stuff from every piece of the tournament, so the World Poker Tour is really making an effort to pump up its game this year. So be sure to check them out every Sunday at 8 and 11 p.m. Barry, let's get to you.
I want to see if they ever make the one change. They're probably going to be mad at me if I say that, but I went to their intro thing where they were showing all the new things.
That's right, the sizzle reel.
And I said one thing that Steve Lipscomb did where he was wrong is he always put dollar signs in front of chip counts. And then it was like to fool people that were playing for
cash,
$5 million pot, and then the guy who wins only gets $700,000 or something. And I said, it's not only misleading and dishonest, which people eventually, as they get better, will realize you're trying to trick them. But nowadays, when a number, they were listing, now they list more than just the final table. And when you see 18th place and it has a number, it's a chip count. A dollar sign means they are out and they cash for that
That's
much.
the cash amount, right.
So I said, not only is it dishonest, but it's misleading. And when they were showing me the graphics, I said, I always had to look twice to know if the guy had been knocked out in 18th place or if he was still in and had that amount of chips, because you're using dollars in front of chip counts, which isn't accurate. And so I explained it to him that, instead of trying to fool people, why don't you just do the right thing? And the guy in charge said, yeah, you're right. And the question is, are they going to do it?
Well, I believe that 1 or 2 episodes have premiered. Yeah?
I'm sure that the first few probably are wrong, because I probably
2
saw
episodes.
clips from them. I haven't watched the show because I haven't been on it.
And you won't hear about it until too late. But tonight there's an episode on. The show won't be posted in time, but tonight it's competing with the Oscars. Best of luck to the World Poker Tour tonight. I'm sure the ratings will be stellar. But we know what all the poker fans will be watching. So anyway, yeah, we'll have to check it out and see if those dollar signs are still there.
Right.
So anyway, Barry, you texted me today, and you said that you guys are gambling on politics now?
Well, no, here's what
going
happened.
on?
I got a guy from, I don't know how, when you say Middle East, I don't know if all these countries that are having problems, we have Yemen, we have Tunisia, Egypt, and of course now Libya. Libya's in Africa. I don't consider that the
Egypt's
Middle
in Africa too. But
no, but Egypt, I guess, is kind of part of that
on the East Coast,
Middle
right?
East, whereas Libya is a little further down. And so, I always thought that was like Northern Africa or something like that.
Can we just refer to all volatile political
So I don't know.
climates as Middle
I don't know
East?
how I'm going to call these countries. And I don't know if they're all Arab countries. If that's right, they seem to be Islamic. But even that,
we
they
could
have lots
say
of different religions.
countries of political unrest that happen to fall on the eastern side of Africa or western parts of Asia and all the parts in between.
Right. Well, there's even somebody we're hoping Iran will be one of these countries. Except we saw what happened when the demonstrators came out in Iran to demonstrate against the government. You know what they did? They just shot them all, or imprisoned some of them, shot the rest. So it didn't work. So even in Iran,
That's actually what happens here, by the way, when you complain about Matt Savage's tournament structure,
Right.
is you just get shot.
But anyway, maybe you're right. Maybe it's better to say these countries that are having a lot of political unrest. Well, what this guy wrote to me on Poker Road forums, he said, because of all the political unrest in these countries, we're not having sporting events. Everything's like shut down, and so we don't have anything to bet on with the bookies. So what all the bookies, the action that everyone's taking now is who will be the next leader to have to step down. So he was telling me how he got 3-1 on the Yemeni leader. That was his big bet, and I told him, Gaddafi's going to go first. You're really making a mistake there.
I mean, but these are bets that could
I was touting
that could take a very long time to pay off, right? I mean, do we expect that these things are going to happen as quickly as Egypt did?
Well, yeah, aren't we? I mean, you probably aren't watching CNN and all this stuff at night.
Not as much as I'd like. I'm only getting 4 to 6 hours in per day.
Yeah, most people think. I mean, either we're going to get Gaddafi out, or he's going to kill everyone in the country. He's hiring mercenaries from other countries to come and kill his citizens.
Right. So I'm saying, this bet. First of all, you got to live through it. Second of all, I mean, we may not see the end of another political dictator for a long time.
Whatever. It's interesting they're getting their gambling.
So
fix,
you would take
your
money on Gaddafi.
Yeah.
What odds are we getting on Gaddafi at this point?
He's probably a money line favorite against the field at this point.
You
I think.
You think he's paying even money?
Yeah, because it's really hard to get the Saudi guys out. The sheiks and them.
They've got a couple of bucks.
They're going to be tough. Yeah, they got money. They got what they do is. They promise their people, and even I guess Gaddafi did too. All these guys have financially, I don't know, raped the right word, whatever. That they have the wealth in the country, and so now what they started to do is say, like Gaddafi said, I'll give everybody $400 or $400 whatever, if they stop revolting. He's not giving them back some of the money.
I mean, well, that's something. That shows that he's at least willing to bargain. You never do that. You never. Never let him see a
It's
sweat.
like even with Mubarak, you figure out, he's estimated to be worth, let's say, $50 billion in a country. I don't know if Egypt is 80 million people, but if you figure it out, he could give back. I don't want to do the division. Is it $1,000 a person or something like that?
I think $1,000 a person would end up being $80 billion.
Right. So I'm saying a little less
bit
than $1,000.
less, yeah.
But but it's basically this is what they've stolen from their country, and everyone's impoverished. Lots of impoverished people in these countries because of the wealth at the top. I mean, we have a lot of corruption in our country too, and we're losing a lot of our middle class too. But
yeah, remember how everyone forgot about every problem in the country when there was that tax surplus and everyone got $400 and all was right with the world?
Yeah, well.
See, that's all it takes. If the American people were bought off just as easily, $400.
I think I read somewhere that, of course, that we have such polarized politics these days that you have people in the right wing saying, yeah, we need to do what they're doing in these other countries and take up arms against Obama and stuff like that. It's pretty scary.
That is a little scary. I have a friend who literally thinks that, and says this vehemently, that Barack Obama is the Antichrist. And I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe you don't agree with his politics. Maybe you think he's a bad president. I find it really hard to believe that he's been sent here by Satan to end society. Like, I don't know. It seems a little far-fetched to me.
Yeah, I always thought, boy, we really digressed, that Hillary Clinton, the problem with Hillary Clinton was she was so polarizing that it would be problems and people wouldn't be able to work together, but it's happened with Obama, so
yeah,
whatever. But that's another story.
That is another story. So Barry, you said that you don't think I watch a whole lot of CNN, and I don't. But there are a lot of people who all watched last night's premiere of Season 7, I believe, of High Stakes Poker. I was interested to see how this was going to go over. Now, I didn't get a chance to see it because I was here and I forgot to record it. I was interested to see how I was going to go over. I was very perplexed when I heard the news that Norm was going to be the host of High Stakes Poker. We didn't really touch on this yesterday. First of all, I took it as a compliment. I was like, hey, people are starting to get it, that you can entertain people while they watch poker at the same time. And I was like...
You don't think Gabe is entertaining?
No, he is. He definitely is. But they went even further with someone who's even more of a comedian, obviously. Not that Gabe wasn't at one point, but Norm Macdonald is a straight-up comedic actor. I mean, that's all he does. Gabe knew some poker stuff and could be serious from time to time. And I was like, wow, they're taking even further in comedy direction. And I was like, this is kind of cool. This could be really neat. Then I found out that...
By the way, and we haven't mentioned Norman Chad. He's a big fan of yours.
Of course. I'm not saying... No.
He makes a lot of shirt jokes, ex-wife jokes.
You're misunderstanding me. This is the first time that they have taken someone who has more of a comedy background than they do a poker background that I've noticed.
Okay, I don't think Norm's any more than Gabe. I think he's just more recent. Gabe was a stand-up comedian. Gabe would go around, his whole life.
But Gabe's also been playing poker for 20 years.
More serious of a poker player, but
right.
Gabe's a comedian.
Okay.
So Norm is just a younger Gabe, and not as good a poker player.
Slightly younger, right? And to me, I find him to be funnier. I thought Gabe was super funny, but in general, I'm a big Norm Macdonald fan. I would go if Gabe was doing stand-up. It's very unlikely I would go buy a ticket to go see it. Norm Macdonald's a different story. I would go see Norm. Maybe that's just because he's younger. I don't know. Then I found out he was going to be doing it alone, and I thought, oh, this could be tough. When you're sitting in a room cracking jokes to yourself, even if they're good jokes, it's hard to sell them a lot of the time. So I was interested to see what was going to happen. Barry, did you have a chance to watch it?
Actually, first I read the forum stuff about
that's
it.
What I did.
Of it.
I read the forums.
And then, because I was probably playing in the poker tournament when it came on, so I didn't have it. But eventually
let's talk
morning,
about the forums
this morning there was a link to the show, and then I watched the show.
Let's talk about the forums really quick, because I read those. You read those first. First of all, I was really glad that you answered someone. Someone put up something really ridiculous. Of course, everyone's upset that there's no full tilt players on the show this year, and then some know-it-all. Actually, there's always several know-it-alls who don't get it wrong, or maybe have one small piece of it right. And someone went on there and said, oh, well, the reason why full tilt players didn't want to play is because they weren't going to be allowed to wear their patches. And they said it as if they were the authority.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of people saying, Poker Stars ruined the show by buying it out and stuff like that. Now the full tilt players can't play. And I've said it on the forums. I'll say it again. Here's what the situation is. High Stakes Poker wanted a sponsor.
Needed a sponsor.
Yeah, to keep going. They were going to cancel the show 2 years ago. The truth is, and Poker Stars management may not even want me saying this, they have their own show, the big game and stuff like that. They wouldn't want to spend this money, but it's a choice the way it is now in the American market. If they don't do it, Full Tilt's going to do it. They might as well sponsor it, and it's just a marketing.
It's a blocker bet.
So they did that last year. And so as sponsors last year, they got to do a segment from, with Daniel's, Poker Stars something from Daniel was part of, I guess what they got on there. And I don't know if the lead-in said High Stakes Poker sponsored by PokerStars.net last year. I can't remember if it did. But anyway, they were the sponsor. And Full Tilt players played on it last year. This is not a new contract. It was a 2-year thing. This is still, or maybe they had an opt-out. I don't know what it is. It's just the second year in the same thing. So, and from PokerStars' point of view, it didn't even change. But Full Tilt decided that, and again, I'm not even saying they've made the wrong business decision. So I'm not criticizing them. And as I'm sure you know, a lot of the pros on Full Tilt are friends of mine. But they decided they didn't think it was right for them to take their Team Full Tilt players, who they feel have a high profile, especially in cash games, namely 3 of them, Phil Ivey, Tom Dwan, and Patrick. They have something there, and their decision is we can have these Full Tilt cash, other shows that they can do with them and market that way. Why have those guys who are at the top of the food chain right now in cash game poker, be on their competitor's show?
Right.
So that's their business decision, and if you think about it, it would be stupid for me to say that that's the wrong decision for a couple reasons. One is, if I really believed it was stupid, they're competing with a company I represent, PokerStars. So why would I want to try to help them make better decisions?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So I wouldn't even say it if it was. But I'm not even going to evaluate. That's their right to make that judgment. The only thing that bothers me about it has nothing to do with me being sponsored by PokerStars or some friends of mine being sponsored by Full Tilt. It annoys me a little bit as a poker player the way this thing, just like it annoys me the way our government is with the Democrats and Republicans, where poker players aren't free to do what they want. That's part of the reason we became poker players, so we could play and make money wherever we want.
Right.
And so that annoys me, whether they're making the right decision
because
or not.
Regardless of the business of it, there are several players on both sides that want to go play on the other shows because they're fun.
You just want freedom to be able to play poker where you want and not have someone tell you can't. And whether, I am told I can't go to one of their shows or whatever. So I don't like the whole thing, but that's where it is, and this is the business. And so, no, I don't think it's right to blame either company. PokerStars didn't do anything to make the Full Tilt players not be able to play. They made a business decision, whether you think that's the right one or not. And that's where we are. So we didn't get those guys. We got some amateurs. The good news is it meant the games are better because you got some people throwing off some money that you can exploit. With tougher players, then it tightens up the game a little bit usually. And so we had a little more action.
Is there a place in a private game where you can get that many rich businessmen playing in the same big game?
Well, yeah, but usually the good players can't get invited to them.
Right.
They have some in LA.
So this is a pretty unique opportunity for pros.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times you won't have them. Very often, if a pro is playing in that game, the only way he got in was by giving up a piece of himself to some other, like, let me say, whale or live one, where they want him in the game, and he says, "Well, I've got my friend Jimmy, who's a pro,
right?
You got to bring him. It's a package deal."
Is that another Gobbo Boy reference, by the way? Are you needling me about Gobbo Boy?
Of course, yeah, Jimmy Fricky. That's the way he would get in. But
look,
anyway,
if you want me to come Stapes, my coach Jimmy Fricky.
So it's almost like some of the pros. It's like a symbiotic relationship. Is that too big to use on a poker show? Where you'll have the pro make really good friends with the live one, and then the live one knows he can get a kickback from the pro, and they end up teaming up together and trying to make money off their relationship. And I don't have any pros or any amateurs.
There's not friends with any pros.
Yeah, right. But anyway, that's that. So yeah, so it was kind of a good lineup and a good chance to make money. That's the way I looked at it. But I think more what you're headed toward. So the first thing that everyone talks about is the Full Tilt pros aren't there. It's different,
right?
But actually, those guys weren't there the first couple of years when people fell in love with poker, with high stakes poker. Sorry. So the first knock is, of course, people want to see the best players in the world play and make interest. The hardcore poker fans, maybe the recreational fans, not so much, but they want the best players, and so we don't have all the best players. So that's a negative. The second thing is people really feel Gabe has been, overall people have rated Gabe as the best poker announcer for these shows, with Stapes, coming up pretty close lately.
Well, yeah, I'm not even a blip on the radar right now.
No, that's not true. You are obviously.
For 1 year, but let's just talk about the whole history of poker commentary. Gabe is the guy.
Gabe's the guy. Although one thing that's always been criticized, a couple things. One is they didn't like as much when he's alone. There were 2 men in the booth. People felt worked better. And the other thing I've always criticized is I think they need an analyst in this day and age, just like we have in sports. You have an expert analyst. And I told ESPN, I've told other people, I'll do it for free. But they always say that would mean 3 men in the booth. You'd have a color guy Like for ESPN, you have Norm in his color, you have Lon as play-by-play, and then you have an analyst.
You know,
They
I
feel
saw
3 men in the booth is too much.
I saw that you said that you'd do it for free. Can you really commit to doing that for free in the amount of time it takes and scheduling and missing tournaments?
I've done that stuff, and I do it like, I did it with Chad Brown on his show, and I got good reviews from people. I did it live at the bike where it's live.
Oh, no, I believe that you could do it. I just
not only can I do it, I usually do it in one take. And,
no, I just mean the
it.
commitment to the amount of time that you have to be there.
It'd be a contribution to poker from my point of view. I would just want to kind of prove that that's the way it should be and that it'd be better.
Mm-hmm.
I did something with Danny, who used to work for PokerRoad. He's got this Poker 360 thing.
Danny Eaglehoff, right.
Danny Eaglehoff. And so I did something where the time where Phil Ivey won his bracelet. People can go to their site. And ESPN was going to use some of that. And, they said, hey, it is better with expert analysis. So, I did that intentionally just to give them my work, if and I'm not saying I'm the only one who could do it. I know on the forums a lot of people like Ike Haxton and they like Phil Galfon.
And Jimmy, of course.
And Jimmy, but Jimmy hasn't been doing. Jimmy's been behind the scenes guy more than the live guy. But obviously Jimmy could do it too, and I'm sure a number of other people could. But I'm probably more recognized by the public than some of those younger guys. But whether it was me or whether it's someone else, I still would like us to do some expert analysis. And I've talked out with Maury. He doesn't make the decisions on some of this stuff, but he told me for some other things he's doing, we will have, he may be going to switching different expert commentaries each episode. I don't know if that's right. I think that might break up the continuity, but he has some ideas. We're going to get some down the line, but we're not now. But anyway, so the second knock against the show is Gabe's out. And I think he made the decision, and I haven't talked to Gabe why. He decided. People are speculating. Maybe it's because the show's not going to be as good, or maybe they don't pay him enough. He wanted to get the same 10-year salary that Joe Stapleton gets at the big game. but anyway, people like Gabe. He became the canonical poker announcer at this time, so now Norm is the new guy, and they said, he's going to do a bunch of crack whore jokes, as we said yesterday. He doesn't know poker. I've talked to Norm. I talked to him a couple of years ago. He was a pretty novice poker player from my point of view, and I talked to Maury and Eric, who are the guys producing, and they said they're not worried about that because they discussed the hands, whether it was with Gabe or with Norm. They do a couple takes on the hands, and and they felt that would go over okay. So that was the second thing. What was the third thing?
What was the third problem they had?
The third thing that it's no full tilt players. It's switching over the host.
It was the loss of Gabe,
and maybe not having expert analysis. That he doesn't do good enough analysis. Maybe that's more of a Norm thing. So they really were knocking the show and saying and all these amateurs, it's not as good. And so it seemed like the comments were. They graded it like ABCD on the 2+2 forums.
Right.
I know we had a thread also on the PokerRoad forums, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't read our thread just because theirs was longer and had more stuff. Lots more stuff, as it seemed like the average grade was about a C or between a C and a D.
I've got the numbers right here. There were 43 votes for A, 7% of the vote, 130 votes for B, 21% of the vote, 139 votes for C, 23% of the vote, 135 votes for D, 22% of the vote, and 119 votes for F, which was 19% of the vote, with 5% saying incomplete. So,
well, then I listened to it.
Yeah, what do you think?
Norm did a good job. He
I have
really
a
did a good
like
job.
It too.
And but here's what the problem is. I think it went over a lot of their heads because Norm is like a deadpan comedian.
Right.
So like. Vanessa Selfs makes a play that, whether you think is, she discussed it at length when I played in the session of why she did it, and we saw this guy make, later on, she kept saying, now that I say I'll make this play, I don't feel as bad, but whatever. She made a wrong decision, then ended up looking pretty stupid, and of course, it always looks stupid when you see the whole cards. And so she then went into an explanation. They had her like a behind the scenes, why did you make this play? And she explained it. And Norm just deadpanned, like, oh, well, now that makes sense. But it was like a facetious.
Right.
Like he had already said the play, you made a bad play, and then she gave some explanation. He was like making fun of it, but not, but he did it in the way that Stephen Wright would do it. And so I think if people haven't seen Norm's stuff, Stephen Wright is one of these comedians that's all like monotone. A real funny guy,
Yeah, I know Stephen Wright, of course.
And so his delivery was like Stephen Wright, and I think maybe the biggest problem, he actually was funny, but like I said, the people didn't get it. It was very clear. The younger crowd didn't get that kind of humor, and I think maybe it's because if it's one of the first times we've had in a poker show, and maybe it just doesn't fit. No enthusiasm.
Right.
If you go back to some of the early stuff. Yeah, right, exactly. If you go back to, like, they used to laugh, they used to call it a Bartgasm with one of our early hosts, Bart, with Live at the Bike. And a king, can you believe it's a king? It doesn't help anyone, but real enthusiastic. And so that's kind of, I think, what they noticed the difference. Gabe was very, very conscious, because I used to discuss poker announcing with Gabe for a couple of years before he did high-stakes poker. I mean, I don't want to always put myself in the middle, because people will say, but I was the one who forced Gabe to be the announcer for high-stakes poker.
Oh, there we go. A little Greenstein credit. There's not a sound drop for that.
I mean, now that Gabe's off, and Gabe will tell you it's true. That's the story that I can tell, how Gabe got onto high-stakes poker. The first year I told, not Maury, but Henry, who was in charge of this, you got to get Gabe on high-stakes poker. He's the best. Because for 2 years, Gabe had been telling me, I like Norman Chad, but of course
I love Norman Chad as well.
Yeah, Norman's not as good at poker as Gabe, obviously. And so Gabe would call me up and say, and I don't even watch these things, say, did you watch that show? And I said, no, Gabe, I don't watch it. He says, well, this is what he said, and this is what he should have said. He used to say for 2 years, this is, because Gabe and I played poker together, this is what poker announcing should be. You could say it in such an interesting way, but they don't do it. And they can give the analysis with the comedy. He was telling me this for 2 years, and he had some really good stuff. And so I went to Henry, and I said, Henry, you got this Michael Koenig guy, and, he's just not that good. And Gabe is, in my opinion, I've seen Gabe do stand-up. I've seen Gabe do roast. He is good. He's a professional at this.
Gabe's a
and you got to give it. And Henry said, no way, I won't have Gabe on the show. And the reason was because Gabe played in Henry's home game on Monday night when Gabe had a big bet on Monday Night Football, and Henry wanted the TV off, and Gabe was sweating this big bet. And they had a big fight over Gabe watching Monday Night Football, so that kind of ruined their relationship. And because of that, and so then I lost my bid for it the first year, and then I just went to Maury and I said, Maury, we got to get Gabe, because I tried to work with Michael Koenig, and Michael, I think people like his writing and think he's written a couple interesting books, so I don't want to knock him there. But he did what a lot of people do. He used the information of the hole cards too much, where he would say, that's just a dumb play when it didn't work, and that's he'd always be able to rationalize why it was the right play, and he knew always the guy should move in here. Well, yeah, because he's got the best hand, or the guy should never call there, because always it wouldn't work.
But the same situation would flip-flop. I don't know if it was you telling this story or someone else did this week while we were taping the big game, that he could be in the exact same situation.
Yeah, the exact same situation, say the opposite if it didn't work out.
Right.
And so as somebody, one of the producers said to me, it is amazing that he's actually had the right suggestion for the play 94 times in a row, isn't it? Yeah, that's what they said. And I tried to explain, and Gabe understands, when I did poker announcing, I almost never suggested a play. I always said, well, here would be the reasons to raise, here would be the reasons to fold, and here are the reasons to call. Because that's kind of the way I think of poker. There are reasons often to do each of the three things, and then you try to choose the best decision. And I kind of let the viewer say, this reason is more compelling than this other one, and make up their own mind. That's really the way I do it. Gabe has his way, which sounded pretty good. So I really bugged Henry about it, and finally Henry said, okay, we'll give Gabe a chance. And we gave him a chance, and obviously it took off. So, Gabe and I were pretty close, but I haven't been playing poker with him. I haven't talked to him. And he had his reasons, and good chance, whatever they are, they might be personal or having to do with maybe conflicts with people on the show. I don't even know, but they're probably things that wouldn't end up going public, because the fact that they're not public now means probably they don't want them to be public, right, what the reasons are, if you know what I mean. But anyway, Norm, I think really the only thing that maybe he should change, I don't think the deadpan comedy works that well with poker.
It's tough when you're alone. If there's someone, I think, in the booth to laugh along with him and people can know it's a joke, I think it would work better.
Yeah, maybe. There are emotional highs and lows in poker as somebody sucks out, as somebody makes a really good play or a really bad play. There's emotion, there's ups and downs. And so we didn't get that. So if I were to knock Norm, I thought the analysis was fine for the poker show. Again, they work with Norm, I'm sure, as they work with Gabe, even though, like we said, Gabe's a better player. But it was fine. And he was funny if you were willing to let him be funny.
Right.
If you know what I mean. And I think when you listen to it, you'll be saying, why were they so negative? We had people saying, there are people saying this is the worst announcing that there's ever been in poker. And again, it's just because they wouldn't let themselves get into what he was doing.
Right. Well, I actually find myself, especially at first when I was doing the big game, having a very emotionless reaction to things. And I think that someone like Norm, who's been around poker for a long time, maybe he doesn't play at the highest of levels. He's been around poker for a long time. I've been around poker for a while in the grand scheme of things, whereas, most people are young people, haven't been around quite as long as me. And then I feel like I've seen it all, right? I've seen you drag a $250K pot in front of my very eyes in Bobby's room. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen everything, so it's hard to get excited.
When? Not for a while.
No, it was a little while ago. I remember you weren't even really looking at the pot. You were just, like, dragging it in, eating a sandwich, and talking to Seabach. So I kind of feel like, even though I haven't, I kind of have the attitude of like, I've seen it all. So occasionally when I first started watching the big game, I'd be like, and this guy sucked out. Like, we've seen it 100 times, but there is a little emotion in that, and the producers of the big game are really good about that, being like, no, this matters.
This is Mark?
Yeah, Mark, exactly. This was really unexpected.
We can say Mark Mayer.
That's right. Mark Mayer is great at that.
He's good.
He's really, really good at keeping the human element alive, and so I think that there is something to that for sure.
Right.
Now, what I wanted to bring up, Barry, is that there were some people that came to Norm Macdonald's defense, and I'm glad for that, and I can't wait to watch it because I'm truly a fan of his, so I'm sure I'll like it.
Well, I think, and somebody said, Norm is a guy, that kind of comedy, you like him or you don't, and so, and maybe it sounded better to me, just like when somebody tells you a movie's real bad. I was fearing the worst,
right.
That he was just going to be saying the dumbest thing, like, so-and-so has a straight. No, actually, that's only a 4-card straight. Really dumb poker stuff. But no, there was nothing like that.
Yeah, so I think people may be a little harsh on him. And when someone as beloved as Gabe is, they're really tough shoes to fill. One of the few things, though, that people had specifically called out as being awesome was a play by Mr. Barry Greenstein. And
well, before we talk about that play, here's one funny thing that I know is going to happen.
All right.
Is Gabe, as I said, before Gabe did not, he would always call me up. I know that Gabe will be watching these shows, just for the people out there who wonder, and he will know exactly what he would have said on these hands. And the next time I see him, he's going to be telling me.
You got to ask him if you can tell us.
Yeah, he's going to be telling me, this is how I would have done that hand. Gabe's a real professional, by the way. A real professional comedian, writes material. He wrote for, comedy shows. Like a lot of the comedians who did shows, first they were writers for, The Tonight Show or different shows like that, and then, like a Conan, wrote for The Tonight Show first,
right.
Then eventually got his own gig. And so, Gabe, was one of these joke writers. That's what he did. That was his profession. So, he'll have it scripted, what he would have said and the whole thing.
Which is how I do it, by the way.
And I criticized you on how you set up one of my good bluffs on the big game, as you remember, where I check-raised bluffed on the turn. It was pretty sexy play, really. And this was another pretty sexy play. And I had this play in mind before I went there because I know, especially when you get amateurs, they're going to telegraph their bets with their bet sizing, the strength of their hand, a lot more than professionals. As you know, if you follow my stuff, I always recommend in certain situations, you're going to bet about the same amount. And most young players have gravitated towards certain type of 3-bet sizing. Bet sizing has advanced over the last many years, but it's what I did 30 years ago. But the now all the players are doing it. They have teaching schools, whatever, to tell them, raise in for this amount, 3-bet to this amount, bet this percentage of the pot, with that type of textured flop, et cetera, et cetera. And so part of the reason for that is to not give away your hand. Whereas with amateurs, they're going to, a lot of times, some of them will bet more to try to scare you out, and you kind of get into that. He doesn't want me to call, or some of them, at some level, he has an overpair and he wants
Why
to
so
shut
much,
it down.
amateur?
Right,
Why so much?
but also with value betting, and that's why a guy, one of the things, even a guy like Durr it does probably better than, probably one of his strongest things. We have some of the young players, especially the PLO players, I think, like a Jungleman and a guy I've watched that I know better, Ashman and PLO. They get these things where a lot of times you can't tell if they're bluffing or value betting because they're betting so thin value and they're making big bets on some of these things. That's a really tough thing to do. But you know what I'm talking about?
That's my weakest. I cannot make thin value bets at all. I'm a check behind.
But a lot
always.
of times it's as some of the younger players are calling them merging, where they're not even sure what they're doing, but they're keeping the pressure off and making people have to call them down in all sorts of spots. Okay, and so one of these situations that comes up is where someone value bets, and in this case it happened where a guy value bet me on the river. It looked like he could have been bluffing because I thought he had a flush draw. I actually had never seen his hand until I just watched it, okay? And I thought he had a flush draw, and I thought there was a good chance he had a queen in his hand and he had hit it on the river. And I could have just called the pot. He bet, like a third of the pot. I could have called out a pair of nines. But what I did is I said, it may be right, it may work just to call, but if he has the hand that beats me, it can't stand pressure. So what I did is I combined those two things. I'm calling the bluff in case he's bluffing, but I'm raising him off his value bet because I don't think he can stand a big bet. So, it's something that...
It's high level.
It's something I did 30 years ago also, but nowadays some of the, we had I can't remember, he's on High Stakes, said he was the one who came up with the term
A.E. Jones?
merge. Exactly. He said he's the one who came up with that term merge. Good term for it. So a lot of these plays that... I made all these same plays when I was their age, but I didn't have names for them. I had concepts for why I was doing them rather than have them named, whether it was, 3-barreling or 4-betting or whatever.
Right.
We didn't have those names and cut off and on any of that stuff, but we did these things. So here's another one of those things where, it's like in case he's not bluffing but he's value betting, he can't take the pressure.
Now, did you, after you made the play and saw it on TV, did you write Norm Macdonald an email telling him you didn't really like the way he called it like you did with me?
He called it perfectly. He called it so good. When you see it, you'll say he nailed it. But the reason might be because I discussed it with Maury before it aired.
Okay.
And I said that I was afraid they weren't going to see what was going on. That
this is very, he's like, hey, Maury, come here for a second.
No, I said, Maury, this is a pretty good bluff. And I was thinking how you screwed up the last one. And I said, and I told, and he had already told me this is like one of the best plays in the show. And so they were going to kind of, they want to make sure they do this one right. And he already had some ideas of how he was going to present it. And I said, and then I told him what my thinking was. And I still didn't know the hand. I said, I thought that the guy probably had the queen-eye flush draw and hit the queen on the river. And I was right, actually. That was the most likely scenario. But just in case he could have also had error. I wasn't positive. But in either way, I just didn't think he could call a big raise, and I raised, and he folded. And it was the queen-high flush draw. And now the way they did it, they set it up so well. If you watch that hand, as you should, because you're now...
in the biz?
Gabe off the air, you're now the top commentator in poker. You would be rated the top because the king has stepped down.
Well, I beat him by the bluff. He's by
Oh, you even won.
Yeah.
You even won the title. So I guess if he didn't, maybe that's why he stepped down. Maybe it's because you beat him that he stepped down.
I beat him by less than 3%.
But they slowed the hand down a little bit, really well. Where what they said is that I checked and they said that he bet, and then Norm said, "Do you think he's going to pay him off?" I don't think so. So he left the suspense where he didn't give away that there was another thing to do.
Right.
And then he says, he's grabbing for his chips or something that looks like he is going to pay him off. And then, whoa, he probably did show emotion to them. Hey, and I made a big raise, and now it was once I make the play, it's an expert play, and I think most amateurs watching didn't see it coming. Just like the check raise bluff on Daniel.
Right, except I tipped it a little bit.
Except you tipped off that you said Daniel made a bad bet to kind of give the foreshadowing that it's going to hurt him. But Norm had acted like the guy made a reasonable value bet, and it wasn't going to hurt him. Then I make this play. And when I make this play, I think most people, even if they aren't really accomplished poker players, the light goes on, and that's why I got such accolades in the forums. The forum play, especially in NVG, and 2+2,
that's the one
are pretty low stakes players for the most part, and and often say a lot of dumb poker things, but they're poker fans, and they watch a lot of poker, and so I'm sure as they were watching this, as soon as I made this play, it's like the light went on that. Yeah, that is what you do when someone value bets you, but they can't stand the pressure. You put a big raise in, and then what are they going to do? And so that's why they're all so happy with that play.
Yeah, so good on you, Barry, for being one of the few shining moments. According to the forums, I haven't watched it yet. I am looking forward to it. One thing I wanted to say, my only Gabe Kaplan story, I don't think I've ever met him, to be honest. Maybe just a handshake. Never spoke or had a conversation with the man, but one time we were on the same flight back from Vegas to L.A., and it was when I was waiting to hear back from the big game, whether or not I was going to get the gig. And I look at Gabe Kaplan, and I go, there's the pinnacle of poker commentary. And he was in a ripped sweatshirt and basketball shorts, and he was carrying his luggage in a plastic bag, a plastic grocery bag. He had his clothes in him. And I'm like, do I really want this job? I mean, this is the guy who's at the top.
But isn't that the life you already had?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, geez, I was better off podcasting. So I was like, man, what am I getting myself into? If this is the best the industry has to offer, I'm like, even now my luggage is nicer than a Ralph's bag. So, anyway, best of luck to High Stakes Poker. I really hope that people warm up to Norm because, obviously, I think more poker shows on TV.
And one other thing that I want to throw in.
Yes.
It's like some of those people, they want to hate. It's different. They want to hate. They're amateurs on the show.
It's vitriolic, as I say, Barry.
Yeah, they don't have Phil and Tom, and they really like them.
Haters going to hate.
Yeah, loosen up a little bit and just appreciate the difference, really. It's a little different, but it's still a fun show. I think they did a good job. I was worried about it, too, because I'm part of it. But I think they did a good job. I think Norm can get better. But I was actually pleasantly surprised. And part of it, and I think that will go a long way with them, the people don't know Norm. Norm is a nice guy, and I think that should kind of weigh in there, that he isn't someone you should dislike.
Right.
Norm's a real easygoing.
He really is. I approached him at the
guy.
World Series of Poker a couple years ago, told him what a huge fan I was. He was very gracious. We chatted for a while. He did an interview for me, so I couldn't imagine. He's a really great guy.
You get some people in the celebrity biz, whether it's poker celebrity, other celebrity, who they what's the right word? They're not prima donnas, but they don't treat people that well.
Sure.
And then you get other people that it kind of...
He's talking about me.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who you are. You come up to them, and, they don't know you. They're still, hey, buddy, wasn't that funny what happened? And, they'll treat you like you're one of their friends. And Norm's that kind of guy. He's just friends with everyone. And so someone who's friendly, be nice to him. Listen to him. Try to get his jokes instead of try to criticize him.
Let's give Norm a shot. We're gonna call it quits on this segment. We've gone on long enough. We're going to talk about Sorrel, Mitzi. Hopefully we'll get Barry back again tomorrow. But we have gone on long enough. Matt Savage is waiting in the wings. We got to get to him. Poker Road Radio, sponsored by Lock Poker. Back after this. Welcome back to Poker Road Radio.
That's what I gave to Hoyt? Wait, well, then Jessica has his book then.
Poker Road Radio, brought to you by Lock Poker. Coming to you from the World Poker Tour's Los Angeles Poker Classic. We are now joined by Tournament Director to the Stars, Tournament Director Extraordinaire, the only tournament director whose name who will ever have a household name, Matt Savage. Thanks a lot for being here, my man.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to be ordered to be here. Just kidding. He would have come on the show anyway. Barry, what was just going on with the books right there? Barry's talking yesterday, Matt, about how old he is and all these mistakes that he makes being old. You just gave out the wrong books, didn't you?
Well, what happened is Hoyt knocked me out somewhere. I don't even know where it was, like Foxwoods or somewhere like that. Where it was
Foxwoods 2005.
It was a tournament I hadn't even planned to go to, but I went to this regional thing in Chicago, and I got knocked out just at the right time that I could fly to Foxwoods and play it. So I didn't bring a book, and then he knocked me out. And so I told him I'd give him a book next time I see him.
And Jessica Wellman's hitting you up for a book?
Jessica Wellman? No, she's hitting me up for something else.
Oh, something. Oh, hello, Barry. Anyway, we got Matt Savage here. Matt, I want to start things off with we're here at the main event, the LA Poker Classic. Of course, a little bit less of a turnout than last year, but still happy?
Very happy. I mean, for us to get 681 these days, I think is very good. This is the first event of the season for the World Poker Tour that's paid $1 million for first or plus. 1.65 million.
I know. I said 1.6 million when we were waiting for you to come over, Barry, and Matt's like, actually, Joe, it's 1.65 million.
Which isn't it 1.653 million? No,
yes, it is.
Wow. See, we got one more specific guy to the next. Which, by the way, I act like it's not that big of a deal. That's $50,000. Kind of a big deal. Kind of more than I make in a year. So yeah, I shouldn't leave off the 5. Anyway, Matt, continue.
Exactly. Well, it's going. I mean, obviously, I think a couple days ago I would have thought. Low sixes was my number, or so. I'm very happy with 681. I think that's a very good number in these trying times.
Do you think we'll see a day of 900-player LAPC?
Yeah, I think that's very possible, depending on what happens with the regulations and all.
So what are you doing about that? Are you out there? I mean, why aren't you in Washington right now making this happen for us?
I'm leaving that up to some of the other guys. I'm just over here, running my events.
To top men.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of this event, Daniel sent out a tweet. I don't have it exactly, but just saying that, commenting on the structure, and he basically said it's perfect and that all other tournament directors should just quit and just copy you already. How do you feel about that?
Daniel and I kind of feel the same way about the structures. I actually think it's a little too slow. I'd like to take one level out early.
Well, you're thinking that now because you see you're about to run late on the third day to get in the money.
But I think, the 75, 150 level isn't entirely necessary. But you know what? It is what it is. I think that the players are very happy with it. And if they're happy, I'm happy. I'm always a player advocate and want to see them, get as much play as possible. And, so they can have a chance to get short stacked and still come back.
What is the structure? I know you don't have to name every level that's happening, but how long are the levels? And
well, here's 90 minutes, and what I've tried to do is I've tried to come up with a structure that's flexible enough to work on all World Poker Tour events. And the way I've done it is started with 30,000 in chips, and the levels that we have will fluctuate between event to event. So like in San Jose, I'm using the same structure, but the first day we play hour-long levels, the next day is 90-minute levels, and the following day 2-hour levels at six-handed. So it's a varying amount of time, and I think you can structure a good event with the same structure at each event.
And do you think that having like slightly different things about it sort of is unique to, from venue to venue?
Slightly different things about it?
Well, he said that it was shorter on, right?
Yeah. At Bay 101, it's definitely different. I mean, I still say Bay 101's the most unique tournament on the circuit, and, that's where we're going next. Barry's been a big fan of that, and, we're kind of honoring our owner that lost his life last year, Mr. Marco Trapani. So we're trying to we do things there differently. I mean, the fans are the best, I think, in the world. Barry might agree.
Really
with that.
Big turnout on the rail there. Yeah. Well, last year was my first time going there. Actually, it was pretty cool. People had signs, and
it's definitely a lot of fun. And they love you guys too at PokerRoad. They love you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I commissioned an artist to draw a sketch of me while I was prepping one day. He was like an out-of-work artist. So I was like, all right, do a little something for my ego. Draw me a sketch. I'll pay you for it. So
I think you're better looking this year than last.
You think so?
Yeah,
Thanks for saying that, Matt. So are you, by the way. Barry, you too. You guys are just handsome men. Now, we mentioned that things may go a little long today because you've decided to play down to the money. Was that a decision that you made yourself, or you kind of put it out there? Or?
No, I decided before we started that we'd play 5 levels the first 2 days. The day 3 would play 5 levels, or at least to the money. And when I did that and we got 681, I knew that we'd be playing a little later today. But that's okay. It's not going to be too terrible. I think we're right now about 20 away from the money. So it shouldn't be, a whole night deal. So, we have another event going on right now, the High Roller. So we're going to be here anyway. So
how many people did you get for that?
I think it's about 20 right now, with registration still open.
Okay,
so,
that's about probably where it figured to be.
Exactly. So it's going well.
Now, is there anyone that, obviously in poker, not every person will be happy ever. Are there people that don't like this structure?
Not many.
Not terribly vocal
dealers
ones?
aren't real thrilled about it.
Right.
I don't think, probably because they have to deal a lot more. But, I think it is what it is. This is a 6-day event. It's the biggest event on the World Poker Tour. So there should be some play to it. 6-day event. We're taking a day off between the final table and day 5. And on that day, we're going to bring the players that are still into the Clipper game, come down there, and they're going to introduce them on the court. So I think that's kind of a cool
fun
little touch for us. And I think it's good.
Tony G's funny. Have you ever talked to him about structures?
No.
He always says, it should be right away where you can go bust it on the first hand. He said, these low levels where it's hard to bust, they're pointless.
Well, people still find a way to do it somehow. I'm sure even Tony's gone broke in level 1 before. Matt, as a tournament director, what kinds of things do you still leave up to the players to decide, like on the spot, or do you have everything figured out going into it?
Well, I mean, I am one of the first people to admit that I go to the players all the time for advice, Barry being one of them. You know, there's a group of players that I go to definitely from time to time to discuss rules, to discuss different things, and Barry and I, think a lot alike in a lot of ways. Daniel and I think a lot alike in structures and things like that. So it just depends on what we're talking about, but really want to get it out there to where, making the players happy is, my ultimate goal.
Is Daniel really the best guy to come up with structures, Barry, or is he just the squeakiest wheel? Let's be honest.
I think Daniel is real serious about that stuff, and, on the World Series of Poker Committee, it used to be Daniel and Howard used to work over those things. They were the ones who were most concerned with that. I don't know how other people are. I'm more like I'll show up and play whatever it is and not really worry about it. I just play, but some people are really...
I say the same thing. The good players know how to adjust. When, whatever is put in front of them, they can adjust to it.
It would be nice, too, for every sort of style of player to have one tournament that's suited to them, and I think that, obviously, like a lot of play is well suited to a lot of players, so that's probably a good way to go. What are some things that you've learned over the years to just stop asking people's opinions about, or just immediately when someone wants to talk to you about it, you just shut down, you just glaze over?
Anytime Alan Kessler comes up to him.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, does he have any juice at all with you, or is he like that chainsaw, Alan Kessler? When is the last time you actually even could consider?
I kind of shut him down about 3 months ago because everything he said came out of his mouth was negative. I made a commitment to myself this year that I would stop listening to all the negativity. My wife got tired of me talking about him. So I haven't actually tweeted back to him or even answered him on a forum in about 3 months. And I hear a lot less of him, so it's...
Oh, you iced him out. You iced out the chainsaw.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wonder what sort of chainsaw ice sculpture he would make out of Matt's ice. A big giant poker chip, something like that. Are there any... A couple years ago, you were kind of having to deal, it seems like, a lot more with unruly behavior at the tables, certain key players, people drinking a little bit too much. Is there anyone who really does that anymore? Have we had any incidents?
No, I mean, here at the Commerce, it's definitely a different style of event from $100 players that maybe have never played many tournaments at all. You get a lot more of the unruly behavior, but, it's been pretty good. I don't have many complaints. I think at the bigger buy-in events, there's a lot less drinking and a lot more relaxing. I don't know.
Oh, you mean that the entire tournament area smells like cannabis?
I didn't say that.
This was a really serious event, actually. It seemed to be more than even previous years. Usually when you get a field of over 600 people, it's got to be a good field where there's, bad players giving chips away, But I think as poker's gone on, we have so many good players that
you just don't
tables were dense. It wasn't like, you still had people giving chips away, but you had to be lucky to be on a table where someone was just giving it away. But invariably, you had 4 or 5 people know and were accomplished players at your table, even from the start.
We had 200 satellite winners here, and that's kind of a way that I advertise our event, is that if you looked at the list of the first 150 to 200 players, you didn't maybe know a lot of the names. And,
but the
all
other 400,
right, the other 400 are really solid, right? Yeah. So, but those players know how to play also. They sit here and they play, on a day-to-day basis. We had 54 events in this series. So, obviously, they've picked something up along the way. And, I think anybody can win. I think that's that's been the old adage that anybody can win at any given week. And I think that's still the case today.
Well, I think if you're talking about anybody can win, I think that that applies even more. You said there's 54 events you had this year. That applies even more to some of the other events, I would say.
Right.
Anybody can win this event who enters it, but not everyone can enter this event. You did the re-entry tournament again this year, and I read nothing but tweets. I don't even follow that many poker people, but everyone I know who I was following poker was talking about that tournament. Again, you consider it a success this year?
Yeah, for sure. Our $125 buy-in had 4,700 entries. $470,000, $100,000 for first. It's life-changing money for a lot of people. With a $100 buy-in, I think. That anytime you get something like that, it's newsworthy, and you don't see those kind of events in a live setting. So I think it was definitely a good event.
Did they make a deal?
Of course.
Yeah, and when you have those $100 events that pay that much because there's so many entries, I mean, when they get to the final table, they're talking, come on, 23-way chop.
Yeah, exactly. 10-way chop.
Well, this is something
$40,000 a piece, and that's huge money.
Yeah, and this is something that I've actually never gotten a chance to talk to you about all the times we've interviewed. What is your policy on deal making? How much do you participate? What do you do?
Basically, if there's a deal out there that they've put forward, we'll give them the chip count equity deal and hand it over to them, and they're able to deal in that position. Now, this year we had a point series, so that makes it a little more difficult. And even though the deal is made, the money might be separated. We give it to the person with the most chips. That person gets the most points. Now this year more than any other, I think that we had a deal. I think the 54 events, we probably had a deal on 47 of them. So, every day we're doing something for somebody to try and make it equitable for them. And like I said, some people are willing to take less money to try and get the watch or the trophy or whatever. And we try and accommodate everybody to make everybody happy.
At what point?
That doesn't make me happy.
I understand.
I feel
I agree with
it's at the spirit of it's against the spirit of the competition. I think it
all
should be
chops
played
are
out.
against the spirit of competition.
Yeah, I think you should play it out. I think you make a good payout structure. Maybe you have to make it a little flatter so there's not that much incentive to chop. And you compete. We're competing. The reason that you have all this chopping, in addition to the people saying, hey, third place money's pretty good. I could get that by chopping, with 5 or 6 people left. But really what part of it is the staff. They know if there's a chop, they get to leave.
No,
and so
it
happens. I'm not saying for your group, you might have, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So many times it's like 2 in the morning and they're saying, this could go on for a couple hours.
Now,
Then
granted,
people say chop, and they say chop. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I don't play on this level, but all the times I've ever been fortunate enough to be in a situation where chop's been discussed, the staff not only doesn't help out, but they don't want to hear anything about it. They're like, just keep dealing.
Is that in your home game or where?
No, well, I actually make the payouts in my home game so flat that there's a chop every single time because I don't want to stay up and deal while people battle it out heads up for a difference of $400. You know what I mean? So I make it like $50 apart. So they just basically
in
have
mass
to chop.
tournaments and at the Bellagio, they do help out. And
yeah, and so that's at what point, Matt? And I can tell that people a lot of times, as a joke, will say chop with 50 people left, and then they start seriously considering it. Some people will start talking about it long before it's ever really going to happen. So at what point do you know? What are some clues that let you know it's okay? This is actually a chop
point.
point.
The thing that happens here pretty much daily, which is kind of irritating, is that when if we're paying 45 and they get to 46, everybody's saying, hey, let's pay this off this and give him his money back or whatever for the 46 spot, where players need to understand that time of a tournament is where good players and people that are experienced really can build up their stack. If they see the players at the table looking at the clock and looking at the screen to find out, what's the next payout, what's going on, and standing up to watch every bust out, the experienced players are dominating. If they have a big stack, they're really increasing it at that time. And I think more people need to understand that. I try and, not educate them because I don't want to give away everybody's secrets. But at the same time, if you're in that position, I think there's no reason why you should be giving money to that last spot.
It makes sense. I've actually never thought of that, but you're absolutely right.
I wouldn't chop if I was the shortest chips just on principle. And like Matt says, this comes up every time. Someone's saying, "Yeah, we'll just all give a couple hundred to that." Yeah,
right. But then if they don't do it, Barry's a jerk. But that's the thing, is that it's not his fault. If that's what he wants to do, he should do it. And I always try to protect those players. I always want to make sure that those players don't feel like the bad guy, and I'll always jump in there. If one person disagrees, I say, "Oh, we got a few people that disagreed." No deal, right? Because I don't want them singling out Barry or whatever. He went busted, too bad, whatever. It happens. That happens.
And plus, at that level where there's 45 people left, it got to be just a lot of, for lack of a better word, paperwork to go around and check with everyone and make sure everyone's in agreement.
It's not too difficult. But like I said, at the bigger levels, we're not going to see it. Nobody's going to say it here today. Let's pay the.
Right.
You do get a lot of misunderstandings, though, where someone says that's one of the other things that happens with those deals. Something else happened. The guy said, no, that wasn't my understanding. Right. Once the guy doubles up. No, I didn't. That's not what I meant,
Exactly. We've had a few of those, too. But we always,
you do.
Force them into the other direction. So,
how about this tournament here? Any controversial calls you've had to make? Anything interesting go on from a tournament director standpoint? I got my start in poker hosting a game in my house, so I always am really interested in the kinds of situations and decisions that tournament directors have to make.
Yeah, yesterday we had a situation with a player that plays here pretty much every big series we have, named Ray Quatormi. Really nice guy from Texas, came in, and he said, apparently said all in. The dealer threw the all in button. The other guy instantly turned his cards up and said call, and I got called to the table. And the guy, Ray, says, I didn't say all in. I was asking if he was all in. So, of course, this guy has aces up on the table. Ray's now saying that he didn't call.
Hold on a second. This is a potential there. I want you to hang on there. This could potentially be one of my favorite segments.
The angle shooting
That's
range.
right.
What was Ray's hand?
Ace queen.
Yeah, okay, so it was like
So what do we think here, guys? Did we get to the end of the story, or do we have more details to get before we decide whether there should be an entry on the angle shooting range?
Well, so I got to the table and I looked at Ray and I looked at the situation, the way it sat out. He didn't actually pick up the all-in button to try and give it back to the dealer until the other player already had his cards face up, and as it goes, he was all in.
He was all in. Was there anyone that took his side whatsoever?
No, a couple of players actually defended the side of the dealer, saying that, of course, that he had gone all in. It's a tough decision.
Well, the dealer threw the button to him, right? He had time to say, I'm not all in, right?
Yeah, that's what the situation was, and that's kind of why I felt that it was too close to go the other way. And unfortunately, he's a nice guy. You don't like to see the nice guy get the ruling against him, but in this case, it was the best ruling, and I think that's what I had to do.
He didn't go off on you, or pretty tough.
But I did say sorry, Ray, and he said, what are you sorry for? I said, because you are now close to being out of the tournament.
Right. Well, of course, we did have the guy at my table who kept in the hands.
Wait, should I start the music over again?
No, this is an angle shot.
Okay.
He kept talking about his hands.
Wait. One more good measure. For good measure. Okay, go ahead.
He kept saying, like, essentially what his hands were, or, I have a pair, I can beat a pair, and I can this, and I said, you can't do that stuff. And then it was pretty funny. Matt can tell you the rest of the story about the guy.
So basically, I saw him walking around in the tournament. I go, what are you doing? Are you out of the tournament? And he said to me, no, I gave myself a penalty. And he said, a 10-minute penalty. I said, we don't do 10-minute penalties anymore. We do a round. He goes, well, has it been a round yet? And I'm like, probably not. So you should probably sit out a little bit longer.
Yeah, like initially he was saying, why not? I'm heads up. And I said, I agree. Probably the rule should be heads up. You can do that. But then we have people like colluding to not knock a friend out.
Right.
Tell them I've got you beat. Don't call here. And so it affects the other people. So I explained it to him. And then he went away at the break, and he talked to some other people. And
everyone agreed with him.
And everyone said that, he was violating the rules, telling people what his hand was. And that's where he said, okay, so he gave himself a 10-minute break.
It's kind of the angle shooting range, but I don't think he knew any better. And, that's a good thing. If you get players in these tournaments that don't know rules like that, then that there's some...
This is how respected a tournament director is. That Matt Savage is that someone gave himself a penalty and was like, look, I don't want to upset Matt Savage. The guy in the suit over there, that guy scares me. Which, by the way, someone told me that on King of Vegas you used to make a cameo on that show and just nod in the background.
Yes, everyone liked that. That meant like shuffle up and deal.
That's what you did probably. That guy was like, I gave myself a penalty. You with your arms crossed, you just nodded at him.
And of course, he was the tournament director on Lucky You.
Lucky You.
Oh yeah,
rent it today.
There were cameos. You were eating.
Of course, we all get residuals.
I still get residuals from that decent size too.
Right, well, yours are obviously bigger than mine because remember they wanted me back, but you remember I got in an argument with them because they ended up screwing up Mimi's audition, and so they actually wanted me to do a long stint.
The last check I got from last year, about 4 months ago, was $3,000.
Holy shit!
Serious money.
Yeah, no, they sent mine. Mine are one. What are mine? A few hundred. So obviously,
Barry, did you have lines in that movie?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't even remember Barry having any lines
mainly,
in that movie. But that movie is, I'm not going to lie,
mainly
very forgettable.
I was eating.
You're eating so much food.
I got to change my scenes, as Matt will attest.
Right.
I really like Curtis Hanson, the director. He did 8 Mile, and he was pretty flexible. And the first few scenes, I kept saying, "No, I would never do that." And then he would say, "Well, what would you do? What would you be doing at this point?" I said, well, if I played all night, I'd probably be ordering some breakfast and eating. So none of that stuff was in the script. He said, okay, well, get him some eggs. What would you eat? And I got him. And I'd eat eggs 20 times because you do the shoots from all over the place.
Right.
Barry gained 30 pounds after the movie was over.
Yeah, this is him right now. He's now 110 pounds.
But, so it's interesting experience.
Oh, yes, it was. While we were talking about some rules here, one interesting situation developed. I'm not sure if you were consulted or not, but there's a I was playing some live poker, and someone asked a question about what constitutes a bet here. Some places it's forward motion, some places there's a betting line, some places there's a betting line, but it's just there for show. Here there are no betting lines, and something came up earlier. What constitutes a bet here at the Commerce in your tournament?
It's a bet when it's cut out of your hand. So there is no forward motion rule. Until that is cut out of your hand, it's not a bet. If somebody acts behind you before you're done betting, whatever you have in the pot will have to stay. And if it's not yet cut out of your hand, you could actually pull it back. Obviously, there are situations where we don't want people doing that repeatedly, bringing multiple chips in their hand and then dropping some and then bringing them back. So we'll stop them from doing that, and it becomes an etiquette violation, which can lead to penalties.
And when you say cutting out of your hand, how far away from someone's chip stack can they be counting out chips?
Yeah, they can be counting out chips in front of them, and people say in front of your cards. I don't even go by that, but I think there's certainly a perimeter out there. A magical perimeter that you...
Like the Prime Meridian, it doesn't really exist, but
yes.
we know it's there.
This was the best thing you could think to ask, Matt.
No, it's just, it came up earlier, and it's something that is... These are things that are interesting
the
to me.
Vietnamese girls in San Jose.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Actually, I was just thinking, Matt, because one of the things that is equated with Matt a lot is good structures. People think of him. But actually, Matt was known as being the first director to do something else. I don't know if you even know what it is before I say it. When I say it, you're going to agree.
Okay.
That you did something very different. Tournaments were not like this until Matt
shuffle
Savage
up and deal.
took over, pretty much at the World Series. And you know what that was?
What's that?
Started on time, remember?
Yeah, starting them on time. Matter of fact, in this tournament, it was ridiculous. When we started at noon, like half the tables didn't have two people at them. But it was amazing. And then when I came in, players were coming in and said, "What are you doing starting on time? Isn't there some kind of ceremony?"
People nowadays don't know what tournaments used to be like.
Right.
You know,
when I was running the World Series in 2002, I'd start the tournament on time, and people would literally scream at me and say, "These tournaments have never started on time. This is ridiculous. How can you let people?"
No, seriously, the way tournaments used to, because of course the fields weren't as big as now.
Well, part of that is an LA mentality too, because no one ever expects anything in LA to start on time.
No, this was everywhere. It was just kind of a tournament standard because the fields, initially were 40 players.
Right.
So the way it would work is we'd say...
there was 40 players and they all took 6 cars.
No, they'd be like hovering
there.
around and we'd say, hey, should we wait for Joe to come? Or, and a lot of times, really, a noon tournament started at 1 o'clock. It's serious. And then finally, one year, Matt said, I'm serious. I'm going to shuffle up and deal, as you said, at noon.
Right.
And if you're not here, you're going to, your chips are going to start going in. You're going to be blind. And there wasn't the late, we didn't have the late binds. You bought, you bought in the night before and all this. All that stuff's new too. So Matt was actually the one who he and who was it? Was it Mussolini started the trains ran on time or something?
That's right. Yeah, the trains in Italy.
Yeah.
Wow, Matt, your first Mussolini reference.
Yeah.
I've compared him to Rambo, and now he's getting Mussolini. He's going to be a.
I also was the one that took $5 chips out of play pretty much for tournaments, which I consider one of my innovations that nobody really pays attention to.
Well, wasn't part of that just having chip multiples of more than dollars?
But even then, back in the World Series, it was dollar for dollar, which I think was still the best way to do it.
All right, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Matt, the Celebrity Invitational. This year, the seats were super hard to get, I heard. There were a lot of people who were... so you guys tightened up that thing and tried to... I couldn't make it, by the way, but I assumed that I would have had a seat. Was I able to make it? I was off shooting the next season of the big game, and you're always real good to us about that.
You're a big star now. I had no way to keep you out.
Fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
The tournament director's wife was certainly in there, and
she
had chips laid, and she kept getting these rulings in her favor.
I tried as hard as I could. Yeah. She came in 35th, but she did great. She had no clue what she was doing.
No, that's not true at all. She played fine. She was at my table. She did have a clue what she was doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
No, she played fine.
But after she busted, she said, "I'm so happy I busted out. I'm so nervous." She said, "I was so nervous."
She was working hard.
Yeah, she was.
She really was. She was dead serious.
It's really good to play the "I'm so glad I busted out" card after you bust out.
Exactly.
Right.
But how was it? Big stars this year? Good turnout?
It was a very good turnout. We had 482 players, a lot of international players as well, and then some celebrities as well. It was a good turnout.
There were some celebrities that I'd heard that there's this mythological Corey Feldman home game that I've been invited to a few times. I heard he was there.
We had, at my table, I was thinking of Jonathan, we had some UFC fighter.
Oh, Randy Couture?
Yeah.
Oh, Randy Couture,
I didn't know who he was, but,
he's a big star for UFC.
Yeah.
He's in movies, and he's as big as it gets for UFC.
He is not... a top poker player.
Yeah, he's definitely not.
Who is in the Celebrity Invitational?
People tried to rebuy him in. He said, no, I used my rebuy up after the first hand.
Nice.
The first hand, nice. One last thing, Matt. Okay, so everyone, do you actually say the word shuffle up and deal?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I was hoping just one time, for me, just for laughs, if there's ever like a tournament on April Fool's Day, I don't know. Instead of saying shuffle up and deal, I have an alternate phrase. I think it'd be really fun if you just went, now let's shuffle up the cards and deal them out to the players. What do you think?
Not that funny. What do you think, Barry?
It's so awkward
and
weird.
Yeah.
If you just said it totally straight-faced, didn't let anyone know it was a joke. That's what I'm going to do if I ever do it. I'm going to be like,
that's kind of like,
no one will expect it. Let's
sounds like
shuffle
some
up the
of the
cards.
stuff that people are complaining about in the new high stakes poker. That's some of the things that are said are being a little awkward.
That's right. Some of the things we talked about in the first segment
Boy
there.
to work on something.
Oh, Matt Savage. I thought you were cool. He's the last guy in poker that didn't take a Gobble Boy shot at me. There it is. All right, everyone. Matt Savage. We're going to let him get back to the tournament. They're getting close to the money. Thanks a lot, my man.
Love you guys.
Always
Thanks,
a pleasure.
Tom.
Thanks. PokerRoad Radio, brought to you by Lock Poker. Back after this. Welcome back to PokerRoad Radio, coming to you from the 2011 Los Angeles Poker Classic World Poker Tour event. You'll be able to see these brand new episodes, Season 9 of the World Poker Tour, every Sunday night at 8 and 11 p.m. Don't forget, we got the raw deal. We're going to talk to Tony Dunst, either this stop or the next one. I've never met the guy. I'm really interested to find out what makes him tick and what goes into the raw deal. And don't forget, we've got those 4-color decks and also day one coverage in all these World Poker Tour shows. We are just about out of time. I want to thank Matt Savage for dropping by, but I promised a lot of big announcements on the show this week, and there are bigger ones coming up. I hope. I'm waiting to get the okay on a couple of them, but I've talked to Scott Huff, who is the brains, along with Barry and John Caldwell, of creating the Poker Beat, and there was this character on the Poker Beat called the Insider who would call in every week and talk about all the sort of mistakes or assumptions that were made on the previous week's show and kind of clue people into the fact that, maybe the guys on the panel aren't always as dialed in as they claim to be. And Barry, you were accused of being the insider.
Yeah, and people still say, hey, we know Barry's the insider and all this stuff. Here's what happened. Like one of the first, may have been the first week I listened to stuff, and of course, I said, Scott, you actually got this wrong. I wish you would have called me and told me.
This is back when Barry used to do this routinely with us, and it's been happening less and less. I don't know if Barry's just not listening to as much stuff, or we're actually getting more accurate with the things we do.
Or I've given up on you.
Yeah, exactly. One of the three options.
Right. Or that I just am not noticing what goes on anymore, which is probably closer to it. But
we're merging. We're merging those four choices.
Or with you with the big game, I'd send you a text, hey, maybe this or this, and critique you. I do with Scott too, and then Scott also the way. Actually, the Poker Beat was a little bit. Like some of the ESPN shows, that was the idea, whether it's the sports reporters thing,
Around the Horn,
or they have the other one where
PTI.
At the end with PTI, the guy Reali, fact checks them. So it was one of those ideas, and Scott says, after he does some of the shows, the next week, people write in and they say stuff, or I might say something, it ends up being a conglomeration that he gets new information to correct some of the old stuff. And then he said, well, I know what I'll do. I'll just impersonate you. And so what happened was, because he thought it was funny, he always liked to, remember, used to do
Scott.
He used to do, we had
my
the thing.
book, Ace on the River.
He did the Ace on the River impersonations that everyone liked. And then I did the one where I was impersonating him impersonating me. Remember there was one where I did that too?
Yep.
And so we had that. So we had a lot of fun with that. So he said, I'll and then I said, but some of this stuff might end up being critical of people. You really can't impersonate me because some of the people are going to think it is me.
Right.
Okay. And then and some of the stuff was you might get inside information. Like, I sometimes gave him inside WSOP information or whatever about a person, something that the person might not want me even saying, but as an insider thing, we could do it in that way. So I said, nah, I don't think that's a good idea. And then he decided for some reason, he said, okay, I'll impersonate you, but I'll scramble it up in some way where people can't tell, because it's like the muffled voice thing where they have the person in the witness protection program or whatever.
The modulated
and I'll
voice.
do it that way. And actually, someone got it in 2 weeks. Somebody demodulated or whatever the right word was, and they were able to.
Oh, really?
Tell.
I never knew that happened.
Yeah, it happened very early that there was one guy, but nobody ever listened to him. the guy said, I slowed it down or I unmodulated. I found out it wasn't Barry. It was Scott Huff talking, and he's like talking in this voice. He's trying to do like Barry's mannerisms or breath patterns or whatever.
That's exactly what it was. So for those of you who haven't put it together from Barry's explanation, it was inside information coming from Barry Greenstein, most of it.
Well, some from me, some from other people. It was actually just a conglomeration.
But it was Scott doing a Barry impression and then modulating his voice. So and I will say that if someone said to me, oh, that's Barry with his voice modulated, I would have been like, you're right. It is Barry with his voice modulated.
Well, then eventually, I guess, I didn't listen to all the shows, but I guess then he even got lazy on it, and he just started reading it and saying, I got this email from the Insider.
Right, because he didn't have time to
Insider.com,
because
he didn't record it, so then he just started reading the stuff instead.
All right, kids. Well, that's all the time we've got for today's show. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank our title sponsor, Lock Poker. Thank you, guys. You know what we're going to do is games we play later in the week, we're also going to give away. We've got a new sponsor, the little blue cigarette guys. I'm going to give away a couple of those when we play some games later in the week. Maybe with one of our guests, they can take it's one of these electronic cigarettes. What's the company called, John? BlueCig.com, that you can smoke them almost anywhere. They're like, you get your nicotine out of them, but it's not like actually smoking. It's like a vaporizer.
Well, I saw smoke coming from John V. yesterday.
But that smoke is just to make you feel like you're smoking, I think. That's just like water vapor that comes out of it. He's got one right there in his hand. Yeah, take a long drag on that blue light. What do you think, Barry?
I just assumed that he was breaking the laws and the fire marshals were going to be stopping our show.
No, they're actually, you can smoke them in most places that don't allow smoking, so we're going to have some of those away. He just blew it out of his nose like a dragon. Wow. As if you couldn't be any more Asian. All right, well, we're going to give some of those away.
This may go over really big in the Native American community. Peace pipes I don't think are good for you either.
That's right. We got to have some LED peace pipes next. I want to thank our guest, Matt Savage. Thank you. Also, thanks to the World Poker Tour. Don't forget, Season 9, every Sunday night, 8 and 11 p.m.
I guess we're going to carry the Sorrel thing over to the next show. You promised them.
That's right. We're going to do Sorrel tomorrow night, guys. If you want to hear about Sorrel, Mitzi, and more cheating allegations, don't forget, PRR is sponsored by ClubWPT.com. Never lose a dime online again, playing at ClubWPT.com. Until next time, ladies and gents, this is Joe Stapleton saying thank you, John Belong, forgot you, and thanks, Johnny Newcomb, for making those awesome intros every day. For everyone and all the others traveling down the old poker road, this is Joe Stapleton saying, always take the best of it.
Time to sweetheart is bleeding in the snow cone. So smart, she's leading me to ozone. Music, the great community.